morning, everyone. Welcome to the second part of the Innovation Fair. And you have heard this morning, are we sufficiently geared for innovation in the run up to 2030? Do we have the right frame of mind, policies, and skills to innovate? These questions will be answered in this morning's conversation. And to set the stage for that discussion, please welcome on stage our Chief Economist and DG of ERCD, Albert Francis Park.
Colleagues and guests, warm greetings again on behalf of the 2022 ADB Innovation Fair. Strategy 2030 provides the impetus for ADB to, quote from the document, use its resources to promote innovation, enhance project quality, and provide critical support for implementation. As Asia and the Pacific have faced challenging and increasingly complex problems over the last few years, innovative approaches have become more and more critical to achieve inclusive and environmentally sustainable growth in the region. In October of 2021, ADB launched the Innovation Hub with a two-pronged goal. First, to strengthen our capacity as a development solutions bank, and second, to increase our developing member countries' innovation absorption capacity through well-thought-out integrative knowledge building and financing initiatives. The Hub sought to accelerate the customization of emerging technologies and innovative concepts in ADB operations, make it easier for staff to innovate and proactively manage risks in upscaling technologies, create an internal environment to build the capacity of both ADB and developing member countries to innovate and produce results. My department, the research department of ADB, is developing a strategy and roadmap for managing knowledge, and partnering with the Innovation Hub will be an important part of our process. ERCD's work is critical for producing new and relevant knowledge, sometimes called next knowledge, introducing new data and knowledge to start conversations amongst our developing member countries to think about the next generation of solutions and to assess ADB's development impact, especially after our department is renamed the Economic Research and Development Impact Department as part of the organizational review plan. To deliver on this, we hope to work with all partners, including the Innovation Hub, to engage with partners in innovation, re-engineer approaches, tools, and processes for innovation in operations and in research, and finally harness a reorganized ADB to create innovative solutions to impact the lives of the poor in Asia. There's so much to learn from our discussion today about how we can make innovation serve as a springboard to help ADB become a knowledge and solutions bank. We need to create an ecosystem that will help make innovation an integral part of our operations, both for sovereign and non-sovereign lending and in procurement. Later in the program, we're fortunate to have Ms. Margarita Gomez from Oxford, who will share her experience in managing the People in Government Lab at Oxford to improve the motivation, responsiveness, and effectiveness of people in government to innovate, which I'm looking forward to. And so finally, let me just say I'm really looking forward to the conversation we're having and will be having about pursuing and committing to innovation together. Thank you very much. And at this point, I want to invite Vivek Raman of the Knowledge Advisory Services Center to share the work of the ADB Innovation Hub.
Thank you very much, Albert. And that kind of sets the tone for what I wanted to share today is kind of the one-year report card of the ADB Innovation Hub. The last 2 years kind of showed that those public sector organizations that were agile and innovative actually led to faster recovery and greater growth despite the circumstances that surrounded us. Many governments in Asia have established an innovation hub. We are not the first and we will not be the last. And they're trying to, those innovation hubs' purpose is to cut through the internal red tape and deliver and design those projects faster. The case for innovation well established, the 2019 ADB Innovation Task Force gave us much needed data and evidence on where ADB needed to improve. Thank you. Exactly a year ago today, the Innovation Hub was launched. And here's our report card. Oh, hold on. There you go. The Knowledge Advisory Services Center served as the secretariat for the Innovation Hub. And we are happy to report that many of the organizational reforms are intrinsically linked with the activities of the Hub. And we are particularly happy to see that how it is linked to the ADB Organizational Review and the Culture Transformation Initiative. We've designed two very simple goals for the ADB Innovation Hub. We wanted to make sure that it was easy to understand and can be repeated within a short elevator ride. So goal number one, foster a culture to drive innovation within ADB. And two, to design innovative solutions together with our developing member countries. We also have a governance structure which has helped us to shape what the 4 service lines of the Hub is going to be. Service line 1 is applied learning. As the name suggests, it's to improve skills and techniques on innovation for our staff. 2 is partnerships and networks, both internal and external to ADB. We are currently have more than 10 partners engaged, and you will hear from many of them who will be presenting at the marketplace and be happy to meet outside. And if any of you are interested in finding the full roster, we'd be happy to provide that. Innovation management, as the name suggests, is how do we look to create that enabling environment, that ecosystem, as Albert put it, within ADB. And lastly, our projects. This is around to help test, pilot, scale up, and support various initiatives that are happening across the organization. And you can actually see our first pilot that we have done right outside with our micro hydro power plant that we installed in Tacloban just last week. One needs to define innovation just for us to be able to say where is our starting point. As Uchong mentioned, ADB's draft innovation, the innovation framework has been committed to by the Knowledge Management Action Plan, and we are defining it as change that adds value. This is an inclusive definition, and as our innovation capability increases, we are happy to revisit this. So the framework will define 4 types of innovation. Administrative innovation, from the approvals to the signatures that are required in our day-to-day process, to procedural innovation that guides the memos and the staff instructions that guide and aim to help us do our projects on the ground. Conceptual innovation, I'm going to steal Albert's term, and next knowledge, right? The kind of knowledge we want to produce for our clients to push policy and ideas. And lastly, operational innovation, which are the projects that we're actually designing on the ground. Over the year, our activity also evolved, right? We were also trying to figure out how do we, as an organization and as a hub, really help projects, deals, and initiatives. And we've identified 6 ways. 1, to help institutionalize that innovation. 2, to pilot and scale up. 3 is to link with other innovations in ADB and outside ADB. 4, capacity building and risk management. Partnership and networks. And lastly, knowledge sharing. So let me walk you through some of the key progress of what we've been able to achieve this year. Result 1, together with BPMSD, we've been able to deliver more than 13 training programs to over 200 staff on innovation tools and techniques such as design thinking, futures and foresight, and behavioral science. I'm happy to see Margarita here, who will be doing another workshop for us on Friday, just to introduce that concept amongst ADB staff. Besides that, we've also been able to train more than 120 staff from the government of Philippines on futures thinking and design. We hope that all of this would be reflected in country partnership strategies, new reports, and the skills that we are learning here will be applied to even national development plans. While a busy slide, we thought this was important to share with you. This is the Technology Innovation Challenge, and currently our team is supporting and has advertised 9 TORs, which we call challenges, but I broke it down here so that you understand. 9 TORs have been advertised in the energy, healthy oceans, transport, and urban sector. The main goal is to pilot new innovative technologies to address development challenges, which range from efficient heating and cooling solutions in Indonesia, Vietnam, to preventing plastic waste, to promoting efficient wastewater treatment and sanitation. They're all in various stages of implementation. Our team is particularly proud that we've been able to successfully implement our first hybrid micro-hydro renewable plant in Tacloban, Philippines just last week. And you can see a replica of that model just outside, where our technology solution provider is here to walk and show us what we have been able to install in the Dagitan irrigation canal. Lastly, we have deployed 6 experts in Cambodia, Pakistan, and Philippines in various ministries. So here, the knowledge immersion program, as we call it, is actually pairing ADB projects that are in need for ICT support, and we pair that with a knowledge expert who can provide and fill that capacity need. Currently, we've concluded 2 projects in the Teach for Philippines here and in our home ground in Manila, and the Cambodia Ministry of Public Works and Transport. We have an ongoing project with the National Educators Academy of the Philippines and the Pakistan's Ministry of Climate Change. And we have an upcoming project where we'll be deploying someone in Vietnam. These experts are there for a minimum of 1 year, and they document the learning, and the entire idea is to transfer that skill set to the organization that they are deployed in. You can actually learn a little bit more about that program in our booth over there of the Knowledge Immersion Program at the Innovation Marketplace. Lastly, and this gets people excited, we have a physical space which should be launched in Q1 2023 right outside the auditorium. So one can feel part of the energy that we feel a little bit in the room today, right there in the Innovation Hub. And while we would love to keep you updated not only on the progress of the hub, but also all the various activities that we do, please do join our community site. And with that, I'd like to thank the entire ADB Innovation Hub team, and I look forward to the next part of the session. And I think, Suzanne, I'm going to ask you to just come up.
Yeah, thank you very much, Vivek, for giving this overview before we hear from our directors. Just want to remind everyone, when we started with the idea of an ADB-wide innovation hub, people said, especially in management, it's not possible, it can't be done, and it's not necessary. And you see where we are today and what we have achieved and accomplished. So maybe this shows to everyone that no is not an answer. If you have good reasons and you can give good arguments and make it happen, it can be all done here at ADB. So thank you very much to the team for that. I think I'm inviting now...
Jazeera.
Right, Jazeera?
Yeah.
So Jazeera will moderate the session today. Jazeera is the principal knowledge management expert in the South Asia regional department. And Jazeera has many different talents and interests. So over to you, Jazeera.
Great, Suzanne, thank you so much. And hello, everybody, those colleagues who are joining virtually and in person. Welcome to our fireside discussion, and today's goal is to get some insights from our managers on how we can set innovation goals to achieve Strategy 2030, and how can we accelerate innovation in ADB. So I would like to introduce our distinguished panel. We have today with us Jeff Taylor, Deputy Director General from the Procurement Portfolio and Financial Management Department. Jeff has many years of experience, including more than 15 years in ADB, and Jeff is concurrently a chair of the Data Management Subcommittee. And we also, I'd like to welcome Safdar Parvez, advisor of East Asia Regional Department. Over 20 years of experience in ADB, and a very unique experience of strategy and policy, and also operational work in ADB. Welcome, Safdar. And I'd like to welcome Christine Engström, Director of Private Sector Financial Institutions of our private sector operations, many years of experience, including in ADB and also with the International Finance Corporation, Overseas Private Investment Corporation, and Fannie Mae in Washington, D.C., among other organizations. So before I turn to our panelists, I wanted to mention to our audience that we will have a question and answer session towards the end. I'd like to encourage our virtual participants to send in your questions through the platform. And also we have standing mics, so we will be encouraging you to keep those questions coming. All right, so with this, I would like to first turn to Safdar. Our previous speaker from Netflix, she mentioned that, people over process, and clearly it's a very important part. It's because it's behaviors that drive innovation. So I am very interested in your views in terms of what are skills and capabilities that ADB needs to accelerate innovation, and how can we recognize innovation behaviors when we see them, and how we can foster them?
Jazeera, thank you very much. I actually would not put it like people over processes, and I'll come back to processes because processes have their own role as well in promoting or in terms of disenabling innovation, so we cannot ignore them altogether either. But I'm very glad that I'm speaking from a people's perspective, because as everybody agreed in the morning session that it is really people that drive innovation in any institution or organization. What I have learned over my many years in ADB and in other development organizations is that first and foremost, we have to develop networks. It is actually networks that drive innovation, not so much individuals. So we have to clearly separate that. And in order to develop networks, we have to have high-performing, high-functioning teams. And how do you develop high-performing and high-functioning teams is the next question. And then I think that really revolves around the whole issue of diversity. If we say that in ADB we define innovation as a change that creates value, then you really have to have differing perspectives in a team in order to provide that necessary change to enable innovation. And I'm not talking about diversity only in the traditional sense of diversity across genders, across geography, across ethnicity. Of course, those are all given and really extremely important. But I'm really talking more about diversity in terms of skills, in terms of qualifications, and in terms of backgrounds. So to me, that's the first really element, and I'll just give you an example from the department that I'm currently involved with, and how do we do that there. But the second thing I want to talk about is leadership, and how leadership that has trust in itself can create teams that are trustworthy and then can inspire trust and create innovation. So leadership is often maybe sometimes overlooked, undervalued, but it is really a critical ingredient of success. And the third area, for lack of a better word, I'm saying latitude. Latitude in terms of processes and policies. So my main contention is that we don't need to break the rules to be innovative. But within the rules, as a lot of people gave examples and so on, are we really stretching the envelope? Are we really using those rules? Are we really stretching those rules to the point possible in order to create innovation in our institution? My own answer is probably no. And we can do much more. And I think Suzanne also mentioned that, even within the existing rules and regulations that we have here. I work, as Jazeera probably introduced, in the East Asia department that covers China and Mongolia. One of the things that we are doing differently compared to, in my view, from the other departments, because I've worked in some of the other departments as well, is that we have really taken a thematic approach to our work. So for example, in China, we did a country partnership strategy that said we will do climate change and environment and so on. And we have tried to sort of transcend sectoral boundaries. So there is an urban division, there is an education division, there is this division, there is that division. Instead of working on sector lines, we said we will work on themes, on these overarching climate change and those types of themes. When we decided to do that, we then had the latitude to create more flexible and diverse teams. So we said we don't recognize sectoral boundaries. We don't care whether you are in the urban division or you are in the rural division, etc. If there is a climate change project in China that we need to do, we are going to pick the best among you who can lead this project Even if, let's say, it has got a rural development perspective, but we pick somebody from the urban development department because we feel that this person brings the right kind of skills, we were able to do that. And in that sense, what I said, a mix of different qualifications, experience, etc. So we basically try to look at our department as a whole, not as an aggregation of various sector divisions. Now, you might criticize us and say, well, you were able to do that because you work in a relatively small department. And that may be true, but the point of this talk in Netflix this morning also was that you don't necessarily have fully replicable experiences or examples, and you need to create those innovations in your own way and looking at your own restrictions and so on. But we were able to at least go over this sectoral divides and create a truly diverse team. It is very common in our department, for example, to have 2 or 3 mission leaders on a project, each drawn from a different speciality, etc. So I think some of these things that we have tried to do have tried to create value for our clients. And the one benefit of that approach has been that we have been able to take an integrated approach. We talk a lot about integrated multi-sector approaches in ADB. Very few projects actually demonstrate that we are able to do that in very few countries. But by taking this thematic route over a sectoral route, we have been able to create integrated development experiences that involve a kind of a whole of department and whole of government approaches. So I think, and the latitude that I talked about in terms of business processes and so on, is that at our level, at the level of our Director General in our department, we are free to organize and reorganize our teams as we want. We don't necessarily want a mission leader from this division or that division, etc. We looked at it as a collective whole, and we were able to do that, to some extent. Leadership was extremely important because you could say that if it is a rural development project and if you have a mission leader from a different division, well, why would they give up their jurisdiction, and how do you sort of facilitate that kind of change? Well, it's reciprocal, because we said that today, this project, we have a mission leader from this division. Tomorrow, a different project with a different specialization needed, we'll get one from you. And on the whole, I can see that this experiment has actually worked quite well for us as far as our department is concerned.
Safdar, thank you. You mentioned a lot of interesting insights about innovation. And I'm so glad you talked about this intersectoral approach. In his book, Eat, Sleep, Innovate, the Harvard Business Review author, Scott Anthony, talks about innovation happening at the intersection of different mindsets and skill sets. And it seems like East Asia is doing exactly that by bringing different teams together. And I'm curious about your views on how we can foster that across ADB. What are some of the specific nudges and behavior enablers that we can do for different teams to come together to have this growth mindset, rather than, like, as colleagues were earlier saying, rather than saying, oh, here's the problem with it, and this is the reason why it doesn't work. How can we encourage and foster and enable a kind of a more growth mindset that people are open to challenge the status quo and innovate?
I think our upcoming reorganization process in ADB, in my view, holds a lot of potential to enable the kind of change that I was just talking about. I think, first and foremost, I just want to go back to my 3 themes of diversity, leadership, as well as latitude. I think one of the things that we should do is that we should truly make transparent and open up our recruitment processes to get together the best possible diverse teams. I am a strong believer of trying to recruit more professionals from the outside, in addition to promoting staff from the inside, because you want to get diversity of perspectives, you want to have change, you really have to have fresh thinking, you really have to have new people coming in the institution, etc. I think, in my view, we are horrendously underspending on staff training. Of all my years here in ADB, I've tried to say that, look, we really have to up the ante. We have to give staff our exposure. MDG Wu Chong usually, likes to quote the example of a very famous training program for senior leaders we had in ADB at one point in time, together with the University of Cambridge, on issues of climate change and environment. And people who went there, they said they truly opened up their minds and they brought back a lot of wealth of knowledge and so on. So I think there is a lot more that we can do, in terms of building staff training budgets, capacity. I think the Innovation Hub led by Susan and Vivek is a great idea. You heard about the number of people that they are training on new methods to promote innovation and so on. But I think it is still, just a drop in the bucket. And I think there's a lot more that we can do in terms of building up staff capacities here. So I think those two things. Let me stop there. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Safdar. Fascinating insights. And let's now check in with Jeff and get your perspectives on this issue. Of course, everybody is saying that leadership is very important. In your view, how do we keep management engaged in the innovation agenda in ADB?
Okay. My perspective on this is I've got to be a manager by being very, very good at some arcane process. It doesn't make me a good manager. So the first thing I have to recognize as a manager is that I don't know. The second thing I have to recognize is that everyone working for me is not there to agree with me. They're working for me to think. They're working for me to give me ideas. And it's very important for me to acknowledge first that I don't know, or there's a lot I don't know, for those of you that know me. And to actually create an environment where people can come through with ideas. That's the first thing that I have to do as a manager when thinking about innovation. I was thinking about what the Managing Director General said, and it put me in mind with Galbraith's quote. I wrote it down because my memory's not that good. But faced with the choice between changing one's mind and proving there is no need to do so, almost everybody gets ready with the proof. Okay, and we go to Drucker, which I can remember. When faced with the imperative to change, it's not mandatory. Survival is optional. But we have to change if we're going to continue to evolve. And innovation is a very, very important part of that. So the first thing is to recognize that you don't know everything. And the problem is not that. What I try to do with everything I look at is look at the outcome and look at how the outcome can be improved. So if we look at the drivers and the objectives of Strategy 2030, if we look at the Sustainable Development Goals, how is the process that I have oversight of contributing to those? Because if it isn't, we're not doing our job. So how do I look at procurement's contribution to reduction of emissions or climate proofing or gender inclusiveness or social diversity or governance and so forth? What are we doing within the procurement process to promote what I describe as sustainable procurement? And that's not just green, that's not just environment, that's social, that's economic, that's governance and so forth. So there are many aspects to that. But what are we doing to improve the outcome, not the process? The process of procurement is just a means to an end. How do we ground what we do in the ends? And that's the way I want our teams to be thinking across ADB. It doesn't just apply to procurement. But what am I doing to contribute to these goals? And what can I do more to contribute to these goals? And that takes listening. That takes receptiveness to ideas. But most of all, I think, it takes perseverance. Change in any organization, and ADB is typical of many public sector bureaucracies, is hard. It's not easy. Many, many great ideas, yes, but the delivery of those ideas takes perseverance. And the final component, I think, and Susan and my kids go to the same school. I will use something that I love from that school. Mistakes are our friends. And I have learnt far more from my mistakes, and I've made many, so I must be exceptionally smart, than I have from my successes. Because when you have a success, you assume you are right in everything. You're not. When you make a mistake, you analyze what you have done and deconstruct it, or at least I hope you do, to realize what went wrong and why. So mistakes are actually better lessons than successes for me. And I remember my mistakes because they're painful. And so those are the three elements, I think.
Great. Thank you, Jeff. And so what I'm hearing is you're saying a few things that we hear from the innovation experts. And one is having curious minds and having curious conversations, creating space and time for people to get together and question the status quo. And you're also saying, talking about intelligent failures, that it is okay to fail and make mistakes if you have thoughtfully designed a particular pilot or approach, and then try to learn everything you could if you did fail. So those are very interesting insights. Now, my next question for you is about processes and innovation. And in the morning, our speakers talked about process versus people, the no rules. What is your take on that? And specifically, we are designed as an organization to deliver predictable, reliable results, and that in itself could be a roadblock to being innovative. And so, what do you think? How we can address the roadblocks to innovation, and how can we maybe nudge people to overcome some of the obstacles that are on the way?
Okay, we're lucky in the procurement space, and I think other areas within ADB are taking on the same journey or already there. But we have a set of principles that guide everything we do. Process and rules are subordinate to those principles. Okay, so if I see an outcome that's optimal, then we can work on the rules and processes to make it happen. And provided that we do this prior and say, okay, our objective is a reduction in carbon emissions through shortening local supply chains, for example, or minimizing disruption in an urban environment by placing the job site and prefabricating modules and then shipping them in at 3 a.m. or whatever it may be. Provided we can identify this prior, there's a lot we can do. We can't make it up as we go along, because within procurement, one of the critical elements is transparency and fairness. But provided you can identify the rules for each game, noting that the rules can change for each game, as long as you do it prior, there is much more that is possible than we're doing today, rather than mechanistically doing it the same old way in every instance. So that's why I say it has to be grounded in the objectives. What is the ultimate objective of this project, and what is the ultimate objective of ADB's existence, to be honest? And provided you can come to a positive determination and describe it up front, which is the hard part in procurement, far more things are possible than you think they are. And that's the mindset we need to have. You can explore ideas, you can try it out. Some won't work. That's okay, that's life. But the majority of times, if you do it well, you will improve the outcome and the impact.
Great, thanks, Jeff. And I think what you're saying that is sometimes innovation is about pushing the frontiers, but sometimes it's about just doing efficiencies in your neighborhood and doing small things and incremental things. Thanks for that. And it's now time to hear Christine's perspectives on this issue. And Christine, how do you engage the private sector to innovate for development?
So through a variety of different mechanisms. So we talked about earlier people, process, but now the third component is tools, which is really important. First of all, the private sector is going to be normally driven to doing more innovation just to survive, right? So you've got that competitive environment already out there. But moving them to go into supporting, for instance, women entrepreneurs, or doing green or blue finance, which may not seem very evident to them in terms of part of their overall business strategy, is really a challenge, but it's an opportunity. So it's really important to speak in the language of the private sector by actually framing the opportunity for them, by sharing information from other markets, but by helping them also explore their own market. So ADB, we're really fortunate, as well as with other MDBs too, because we have different types of tools. And sometimes it's just a little bit of money. It doesn't need to be a huge amount, but it can really make a difference and help our clients innovate. So for instance, technical assistance grants. So we use them to help the clients themselves scope out these market opportunities to understand them. So Don Lambert is sitting in the crowd here, I think behind his mask. He's going to be talking to you later today about some of the work they're doing in Vietnam in terms of using the Wi-Fi grant to help the banks themselves understand the opportunity to finance women in Vietnam, which is very rare still. I mean, we've really actually moved the market there, but also in terms of providing incentives for the banks themselves. So in terms of either lowering the interest rate costs, providing them with some funding to help upgrade their MIS system so they can actually track the women borrowers as well too. So these are the different tools that we have to engage with the private sector. So first, showing them an opportunity, providing them with the tools to understand the scope of the opportunity, and then of course, then providing them with incentives as well too. Other things that are really important, which is very good for us in terms of ADB and positioning ourselves with the private sector as well as the public sector, is working with regulators. So in terms of engaging the private sector to do more developmental or more innovative things, we really need to have the regulators creating the right framework that gives the private sector the assurance that they can execute their deals. And that's where there's a lot of good opportunities for ADB to come in and play a role there. And it can cross a number of different types of spectrums. So either from creating good digital finance regulations, from doing incentives to have home buyers purchase green homes, EVs, all these different types of things are things that we can do and to work with the regulator to help create those incentives that we need to foster the private sector innovation. One thing that we're doing internally is we've created the Women's Finance Exchange. I'm not sure if some of you have heard it, I hope so. We call it the WFX. We launched it in 2021. So that's an online platform where we're working with financial institutions to help them accelerate financing to women entrepreneurs. So we do that through targeted use of proceeds and funding, which is something that ADB has done for a number of years. But what we're really trying to do here is make sure that we engage women entrepreneurs so that they're not left behind in the digital revolution. You're going to see more SMEs and more kind of fringe customers being left behind. And we want to make sure that we bring them as well along in the whole journey of inclusive growth. So we're working with them to look at digital solutions, technical solutions as well in the FIs, and using technical assistance grants to help build those in to the FI's business strategy to help them execute and reach more women entrepreneurs. One other thing that we're doing is technical innovation challenges. So we've done one in the Pacific to look at how we can reach, what's the best solution for reaching SMEs through digital finance solutions. We're going to launch one next month in Pakistan as well too, which we're really excited about. So those are some of the things that we're doing to help, bring in the private sector, help the financial institutions themselves innovate more as well too. But also really importantly is through the WFX, we're creating a community where we can share our experiences. We're doing webinars, we're having the financial institutions themselves share with other financial institutions from different regions. So we're creating that open innovation platform for them, which I think is really important.
Great. Thank you, Christine. And you mentioned a lot of interesting things. I'm so glad that you talked about the WFX. We did have a good chat with the team. And as SARD's knowledge focal, I am trying to broker different, exchanges and meetings so that we can work together across different lines and across different departments on this fantastic initiative. Now, my next question is on managing innovation risks. And I personally think that ADB is brimming with innovation energy. And the survey that we saw recently, a good 3/4 of, actually 75% of ADB staff think that, or report that they have innovated. And in some ways, that innovation energy might be either constrained or contained. And how can we release and harness that? And how can we amplify that energy? And but at the same time, there are some risks involved. So how we might go about managing the risks?
Yeah, no, thanks for that really good question. So first of all, I agree with you. There's a lot of discussion about different opportunities and ways that we can collaborate together. So that's really fantastic to see. Now, in terms of actually ring-fencing this risk or managing the risk, what we're doing is moving to more of a portfolio approach in innovation risks. So essentially balancing, higher risk, sometimes higher risk, technical innovations or technical investments with a portfolio of some of our standard products or countries that have lower risk, but actually having the ability or that envelope to then undertake risk is really important. The other thing that you have to look at is execution risk. So that's very important in terms of making sure that you can execute your deal before it's gone. We don't want to spend all of our time doing and thoughts doing something really innovative, but when in the private sector, sometimes those opportunities are just gone. So what we need to do is we actually do need to create more nimble processes with more latitude, or take advantage of what's already in place to really be able to move much, much faster. I think those are two important things in terms of moving us towards more of a way to kind of manage the risk. Other things are some of those tools that I had talked about earlier. So using blended finance to help reduce some of the risks in some of the higher risk countries or some of the higher risk projects as well too. So the ADF private sector window, for instance, is a great tool for us. So we're doing a project in Kyrgyzstan right now, which would be normally considered to be higher risk, but we're using a little sliver of that ADF private sector window's concessional finance to then lower the overall risk and thus the pricing just to enable us to do the deal. So I think those are different ways that we can look at expanding in terms of being able to facilitate innovative work here.
Great, thanks so much for that, Christine. Now we have a few minutes for some questions, and if you have a question, please make your way to a standing mic, and please feel free to ask your questions. And we also have some questions from the virtual participants. Okay. So maybe I'll turn to the first question. You mentioned about reaching out to communities do you think that a community of practice will help push the innovation agenda forward, like supporting women's SMEs? So perhaps this is a question for Christine. It's about building communities of practice, and how important is that to bring people together and nurture that community and nurture that and create space and time for that?
You know, it's really important, as we talked earlier, to share those ideas and to learn from other people and listen about their experiences to help serve women entrepreneurs better in this instance, but to also really engage externally as well too. We have to listen to our clients very carefully. Each country situation is going to be different, so we need to learn from our clients, but then share those experiences outside of that particular country as well too, which is what we're doing through the Women's Finance Exchange.
Great, thank you, Christine. The other question we have is perhaps to the panel generally is, how do you encourage the culture of collaboration and breaking silos? Of course, this is a super important question, and a lot of the people in the audience might be thinking, it's fantastic what we have achieved through this cross-sectoral approach in East Asia, but what are the simple things that we can do? What are the rituals and routines and habits and behavior enablers that we can do on a daily basis to encourage people to collaborate and come together? So, Jeff, would you like to take that question?
Yeah, I mean, firstly, you've got to create an environment of trust where people can work. But I find I stop thinking about procurement as a process when I ground it in the outcome. Because the outcome is what is important to our clients and what is important to our mission. And you will stop thinking about, clause 2.1.7, and you will start thinking about the impact of it and the outcome. So I would always ground what we do in its impact and outcome.
And this is the procurement person speaking. Fantastic, thanks for that. So, Suzanne, you have a question, please go ahead.
Yeah, I have one question, especially for Jeff. Jeff, I mean, your department came a long way, right? I mean, when I started 13 years ago, no one wanted to work with PPFD. At that time had a different name because it was like nothing was possible, and it was like basically only roadblocks. So you've been there also this long. What do you think was really the driver of this change, that you are probably one of the most innovative departments, you introduced principles, you're really driving this change? What was it?
I think in part, ADB, along with World Bank and others, had adopted a quasi-legal process of precedence around procurement, which wasn't procurement, it was just risk aversion. And we've been lucky in as much as World Bank got himself into more trouble than we did in terms of its inflexibility. And that gave us the excuse to throw away the old rule book. There was, in my view, much, much more we could have done with that old rule book than we did but we have painted ourselves into a corner. So the World Bank's procurement reforms in 2015 gave us the excuse to rethink the way we're doing it. And we can say what is now possible that was nominally impossible, although I think we could have done more, is now our prerogative. But also Strategy 2030, also Paris, and also the SDGs have really highlighted the potential contribution or the essential contribution that procurement needs to make in terms of process, in terms of impact, and so forth. And I think ADB has worked very hard and successfully to really looking externally instead of internally at the processes, but externally and looking at the impact.
Thank you, Jeff. A very clear example of how ADB has been innovating. And that wraps up our fireside chat. We are out of time. Thanks so much to our panelists for sharing your insights, and to our participants for your questions.